What's up, guys? If you're new here, my name is Dominique, but you can call me Dom. We are at my garden, which is a 50 by 100 foot-ish square foot garden. I'm gardening here in coastal South Carolina, zone 8B. And I just walked inside my garden gate. I came out here to check on some things. I know I have some harvesting to do, and so I just wanted to check on things. So I decided that I would come and take the camera with me and do like a little informal garden tour as I walk through the beds and just check on how everything is doing. This first bed that I have right here, I have two beds. Right now they're 4 by 8. When I planted them, they were 3 by 6. I'm extending all of my garden beds with new wood and a new layout. So there is a lot of, let's see. So this space right here isn't filled in yet. This is where the 6-foot bed ended. But this is my spicy pepper bed. I have two spicy pepper beds. I think one I planted with 62 peppers and the other one I planted with 58 spicy peppers, and they're filled, they're loaded with spicy peppers. I'm thinking about freeze drying them and maybe turning them into powder. I know I have some paprika plants that don't look like normal paprikas to me. They kind of look like bell peppers. They're kind of shaped like bell peppers. I don't know if I mislabeled them or something, but I've been holding them here, seeing if they were going to turn red or what they were going to do. I have like 6 shishito plants here. I have a bunch of purple cayenne peppers that I want to use and freeze dry because I make fire starter in the winter time. And I wanted to grow my own cayenne pepper because I grew my own ginger for my fire cider, as well as some other ingredients. And so I wanted to grow my own cayenne peppers. This actually says it's a pimento, and I've never grown a pimento before, and some people have said the pimentos can be shaped like bell peppers, but either way I've just been leaving them to turn red, and you can see that they're turning red here. And then once they turn red, I'll take them off and taste them, and hopefully they're not a bell pepper, but either way I've been leaving them there. I planted these marigolds from seed and they look gorgeous, but I definitely wasn't expecting them to get this big. I think I planted giant marigolds, and so they're kind of like shading some of my pepper plants in here, and you can see the stem is huge, but they're really, really pretty. This is spicy peppers, all with the exception of this eggplant right here. And then, like I said, the second bed, again, is a spicy pepper bed with a marigold back there. And the peppers are loaded down with peppers that I want to freeze dry. 2 years ago I made a spicy pepper powder where I dehydrated all of my peppers and then I ground them up into like a 16-ounce jar, and I used that for 2 years. I just actually finished that earlier this year, and my family's not a big fan of spice, but I was able to put that in certain things and it just gave it a nice, it did have like a little kick to it, but it gave it definitely a nice pepper flavor. And so my kids didn't really notice it or complain about it because they like to tell me if something's too spicy for them, even like black pepper. So I was really happy with the taste of it. It definitely gave some stuff like a nice flavor, and so I'm thinking about doing that again this year. But then I do have some stuff like pimentos that I want to harvest separately. I've also had roasted shishitos, and I also planted a paprika because I'm hoping to grow my own make my own paprika powder. I think that would be really, really cool. But I don't know if I would grow this much next year or if I would just keep to 1 bed of spicy peppers, or if I would grow 2 beds again. It really just depends. I haven't gotten, this is what I'm showing you right now with all of these peppers loaded down, would probably be my first big harvest of peppers. I did harvest probably 2 or 3 times off of these pepper plants, but definitely not nearly as much as what's on them right now. And so I guess I would reconsider at the end of the year if I would plant 2 beds of spicy peppers, or if next year I would just plant 1 bed of spicy peppers. The next few rows on this side are tomatoes. So this first bed is what I call my cherry tomato bed, but as you can see, that is not a cherry tomato, that's an Oxford heart. But for the most part, I tried to put all my cherry tomatoes here. And so I do have like this test land, which is a really tiny tomato that I probably wouldn't grow again, just because the flavor isn't that unique and it's a pain in the butt to pick it. So I've been sending Niall, which is my 6-year-old, out here to pick it, and she likes them, but I don't necessarily care for them. And then my friend gave me an Oxford heart, and so I didn't have any space for it. I planted it here, and I'm actually going to, I was trying to save these here, but I see like this one has just recently split and that one has a bad spot on it, and I don't want them to rot on the vine. But I do have someone coming in 2 days to come film or to come take pictures of my garden and me in my garden. And so I was trying to leave some tomatoes on the plants, and so that's why I was out here just trying to look and see if there's anything like immediately that I need to harvest. But I don't want to leave stuff like that that's already split or that looks damaged, or that's already super ripe, because I still have 2 days and I don't want them to be overripe and then me not be able to harvest them. So I'll probably harvest those 2 tomatoes just to save them. But I've been keeping an eye on which tomato plants that have like been splitting easy, like this blush paste. Every tomato I've gotten from it has split, and just keeping an eye on the size and uniformity of like tomatoes. You can eat one. Like this is really pretty.
It's too big for me now.
Well, you picked this. You shouldn't have tried to eat the whole thing. Each of my beds, I planted double rows of tomato back to back, and then down the center, I did plant some marigolds in most of my beds, like 3 or 4 marigolds in most of my beds. And most of the marigolds are still alive, and this is my first year planting my tomatoes like this, but I actually really like them, and they seem to be doing really good. So this is a marigold that I got from the store, and I planted like 4 of them going down the row. But doing it side by side, like I said, it's my first year, and it seems to be going really good. The T-post and the cattle panel, I'm like 5'3", and it's a little taller than me, so it's probably like about 5'5", and you can see the tomatoes have grown all the way up to the top, and now they're like falling over, and that's the same thing going all the way down this row. There's also is another, they're both cherry tomatoes on both sides. And then right next door, these tomatoes is what I call like my smaller tomatoes, so they're not like paste, but then they're also that's cut. Okay. They're not beefsteak, but then they're not cherries. Well, this one is a cherry that I got from a friend. I think it's called a Sweetie 100. That one's supposed to be really sweet, Nail. You want that one that you have your hand on, you want to taste it? This year I've probably planted the most tomatoes I've ever planted, but then I've also been able to keep up with them, which I'm really happy for, and that's thanks to me putting down the landscape fabric, which really helped with weeds down the rows, as well as pruning really heavily, and I really like this. I don't know if I'll plant as many tomatoes going forward, because my whole goal was to be able to grow enough tomatoes so that I can make all of our products that we needed. So whether that be pasta sauce, which I was already doing, making all of our pasta sauce, but also barbecue sauce and ketchup, and just basically anything like diced tomatoes, anything else besides pasta sauce I've been getting from the store. And last year I started with 4 gallon-sized bags of tomatoes, frozen tomatoes, and this year I'm already up to like 8 gallon-sized bags of frozen tomatoes in my freezer. And you guys see all of these tomatoes that are out here that are ready to be harvested. I've given away tomatoes to people, and I have a bunch of tomatoes on my table that are ripening inside my house. So there's a couple things I can do with that. Some people have asked me about selling tomatoes, which this year I wasn't in any mindsets to sell tomatoes because I didn't know how they were going to do, so I didn't want to make any promises. But now that you know, I've changed all of my beds out, and I think I kind of got an idea, as this is my 3rd season gardening here. Maybe next year I might be into selling, you know, maybe CSA boxes or something like that, but we'll see after the end of the season going forward if that's something that I want to do. So after my 2 beds of tomatoes, my next bed is my sweet pepper bed, and I've just trying this out. This shade cloth was actually the shade cloth that goes over my hoop house, and I was just trying it with these hoops to see if this is something that would help, and see how I liked it before I order like a big roll of this, and just to see if I wanted to like individually put this over my bed, because we're only in mid-June and we still have about 3 to 4 more months of gardening. So like I said, this is my sweet pepper bed. Mostly all the tomatoes on here, I'm just waiting to turn red. There's lots of green tomatoes, green bell peppers in here. And I do have a gallon size bag already of cut peppers inside my freezer that I've cut and frozen. And so some of these I'm just trying to wait to turn red. But there's also lots of peppers in here. And so I say this bed is doing really, really good, and I could imagine it lasting all the way until the frost. Then right next door is my beefsteak bed, is what I call my beefsteak. Some of them aren't as huge as I thought they would. Perfect example being this Black Beauty. It is actually ripe. I tasted this and it tasted really, really good on a sandwich. What I've been struggling with out here are these army worms on my tomatoes. Inside my hoop house for like 2 days, I was killing like 20 hornworms. But out here, what I've been struggling with in my outside garden has mostly been army worms. I've seen 2 hornworms out here, one on 2 different plants, so 2 different plants, and I was able to kill them. And I've been coming out here every day and checking and sending my girls out here to see if maybe I've missed something, and I have not seen any hornworms out here, which is really, really surprising, I guess because they all flooded to my hoop house this year. But even since I've eradicated like the 40 that were in my hoop house, I have not seen any more tomato hornworms, which usually every year I'm like dealing with so much tomato hornworm pressure, which is really, really surprising. But I think this year the army worms are what's taking over outside, and the hornworms is what took over my hoop house. But I was able to catch it early, and it doesn't seem to be affecting any of my crops. But you can see the tomatoes out here that are ready to be harvested. I haven't gotten a 16-ounce tomato yet. The closest I've been was 15-ounce, but some of these are looking really big, especially that Oxford heart at the beginning. This is a Cherokee purple that my friend gave me that she grew in her garden last year, and I've been really happy to have this. And then my next bed right here is my Determinate bed, what I call my Determinate bed. You can see most of them are dying back, but I'm just waiting for the tomatoes that are on here to ripen so that I can harvest all of them which I'll probably send my girls over here to harvest them, because then I'm going to pull these out. And I've already planted a second wave, or started a second wave of Determinate tomato seeds, because I'm thinking by July I'll have all of these out, and then I'll replant Determinate tomatoes in here. And instead of planting all of the Determinate tomato types that I have in here, like these ones that are diseased, I'm only planting the ones that are going back this way, that you can see have not been faulted or hurt by any kind of humidity disease. Which I planted all different varieties of Determinate tomatoes, but the ones that are not affected by the blight are like the Floridad, the Florida 91, the Stellar, I think it is, Defiant, stuff like that. And so those are I think I planted 6 types of Determinate tomatoes, and when there's 24 Determinate tomatoes in this bed, so by July, once I pull these out, I'll just put in my next wave, and of course they'll be tiny, and then I'll probably start harvesting them probably by October, because they were like 65-day varieties. So I'll definitely still have enough time to harvest tomatoes from them. Let's talk about my cross bed. So this is what I call my cross bed, because it's shaped like a cross, and I had pumpkins here, and I replanted the pumpkins on this side. In a video I showed myself cleaning up, and showed how I accidentally ripped this tomato off the vine, and those tomatoes as well, and I was hoping that they would just vine ripen off the vine, and it looks like maybe this one is, but I replanted pumpkins here, and they're coming out, and I left these pumpkins because they still looked healthy, but I think it's actually time to pull them. They look way worse than when I came out here and planted a second wave, and you can see that there's all of the tomatoes in here have basically turned orange. So I'm thinking about pulling all of this and restarting all over, but I would have to do that now if I wanted to do that, because pumpkins take a while, like I think it was like 120 days, and I think we're right at the cusp of us being 120 days to our last frost. And so pumpkins are definitely some seeds that I started the other day when I started seeds. So I started Determinate tomatoes, I started pumpkin seeds. Did I start summer squash? I know I started cucumbers as well, because my cucumber plants are starting to die back and produce less, and so I just want to refresh them, because not that I need extra cucumbers, but I don't want to have that spot and then have weeds, give weeds a chance to grow. And so that is why I'm going to be replanting my cucumbers, which I'll show you my cucumber bed. These are all the cucumbers that were on the vine that I told Nehemiah to pick. A lot of them had turned yellow, which will feed to the pigs, but the green ones we'll keep. Oh, I didn't know she was actually still over here picking cucumbers. Thank you, Nehemiah. There's a cucumber down there. I don't know if you saw it. And in here, there's like two in here. But yeah, she's picking all of these cucumbers off, because these is my cucumber bed, and you can see they're just starting. Some of them are looking a little spotty, a little diseased. Some of them are still looking fine, but I just want to get all of the cucumbers off of the vine. Right next to it is this bed that I showed myself. I pulled out all of my summer squashes out of here because the hornworm had gotten and killed all of my summer squashes. So pulled them all out, and what's left is just celery, eggplant, some sunflowers right there, and some cantaloupes at the end, and some zinnias. And I replanted all of this, and I do see some squash are starting to pop back up. Some zinnias are starting to pop back up. I planted basils in here, summer squashes, which I see one popping up right there, and zinnias going down this whole row. I'm really happy with how my flower bed looks right now. There is definitely lots of spots that didn't germinate. Even though I tried to plant them like 6 times, I've shared that I've had a hard time getting my zinnias to germinate this year, whether I started them from seed or planted them straight into the ground. But this red one has been my favorite. This red and the puffy white ones are my favorite this year. And if you look right into this bed, I also planted sunflowers and zinnias, and the sunflowers are just starting to, they just opened. And then we have small zinnias down here. But these two beds make me so happy, and so I definitely want more beds that look like this next year because they're so vibrant and pretty. I thought I was able to manage my summer squash bed or my winter squash bed. You can see where the vine borer had gotten in there, and I tried to use BT, but I guess I was too late, and so it killed my whole summer squash bed. So I'm gonna have to come out here and harvest the summer squash. But I have spaghetti squash, I have butternut squashes here, and some squash that I'm not sure exactly what it is, but it is a winter squash and it's huge. And then I'm thinking about replanting this bed, and in front of it and at the side of it both are my watermelon patch, and they did exactly what I wanted them to do, which was take over to stop the weeds. You can still see some kind of grass poking up, but for the most part it's keeping the weeds down because it's growing watermelon on top. Same thing with this bed. For the most part you don't see any weeds, but it does have, this is actually a melon and not a watermelon, but there's 12 different varieties of melons in here, and you can't really tell from far up, but if you go closer there's a bunch of varieties of melons that are pretty big. I did want to mention I have 3, 4, 5, 6, I have 8 blueberry bushes at the back of my garden, and this was the first year that they've been giving me lots and lots of blueberry. Like, the girls are coming out and probably picking a pound every other day of blueberries, and now it's starting to slow down with the hot weather. But this was my first year. They've been here 3 seasons now, 3 years, and I wasn't sure about them, but then they really just showed out this past spring, and I'm really happy about them. But what it did show me was that I can plant way more blueberry bushes than I have. I thought that 8 would be enough. Granted, it might get better as they get more established, and so with the years going forward they might start producing more, but they've only been producing enough for fresh eating, so not enough for like freezing so that I can make smoothies later or anything like that. My girls have been coming out here, like I said, every 2 days picking the blueberries, and whether it's over a pound or at a pound, they eat it within the day before the day's over, which they do not like store-bought blueberries. When I buy store-bought blueberries, they do not eat them, and they just go moldy or smushy inside of my house. But these blueberry plants taste delicious, nothing like store-bought, so I'm really happy for them. But it made me realize that maybe I need some more blueberry plants. So I haven't got any more blueberry plants. I think I already had like 3 blueberry plants already from in pots that weren't producing or anything like that. They were smaller, so I went ahead and planted those inside my orchard area, but it's probably going to take a few years for those to establish, so we'll see what happens with those. So the sun is setting on this side of my garden, so hope it's not going to be too hard to see. There's not much going on besides the bed that I told you I flipped, and this is my perennial bed, which has all of my perennial herbs. I did just go ahead and pick this Oxford Heart tomato, and it definitely does feel like it is going to be over a pound. Like I said, Nehemiah is harvesting the cucumbers, but then also that's definitely over 20 pounds of cucumbers. But then also on this side is my green beans, which I'm not harvesting any right now. I'm waiting for them all to go to seed so I can save seeds. But this was my bush beans, and these were my pole beans. I did replant pole beans down here, which I planted black-eyed peas. It doesn't seem like they've sprouted yet. This sunflower has finally opened and peaked, and now it's facing down. But I wanted to mention this Japanese beetle trap. That black line at the bottom is all of the Japanese beetles. We were coming out here and just dunking them in soapy water, but there was just so much at the top of where you can see all of those holes that we couldn't get to. And so I put that catcher, I put one right here because it said it did a 500 I think it said a 5,000 square foot. So I put one here, and I put one at the back of my garden by the flowers, and that one looks just about as full as this one. So this is what's going on in this bed, is just letting these plants go to seed so I can save seeds from them. I did replant, like I said, black-eyed peas down here, which haven't sprouted. I also did the same thing over here with planting black-eyed peas, and it just looks like only one's germinated. So I'm probably gonna have to come back out here and replant that area again. And then of course there is my corn bed. This is my sweet corn bed, and they have tasseled. Oh, there's worms in there. Ugh, I could see the worms right there. But I'll wait till they turn black, and then I'll harvest the corn. And we'll see how I did on corn. I didn't fertilize this bed after I planted it, and so right now it looks like I'm only getting 1 to 2 ears of corn per corn stalk, which isn't great, but I'll take it. We don't eat a lot of corn. And then I planted bush beans at the bottom. And I just actually harvested all of the Determinate tomatoes that were turning, and we just put them upside down in the house. I'll show you like that so that they can finish ripening. Yay! This is my first tomato that's actually been over a pound. This is a pound, 2 ounces, 2.2 ounces. And so this is just about 9 pounds of tomatoes from the Determinate tomato bed. And then all of these tomatoes right here are the tomatoes that were in the hoop house that we harvested earlier. All of these right there. And then these were also the little tiny tomatoes I was telling you Nail harvest for me. And I just leave them in this bowl because the kids come by and eat them fresh, or I use them to make cucumber tomato salads. But this is basically my whole table full of tomatoes, and I just turn them upside down until they harvest completely, and then I either use them or I freeze them. I will say that the June garden, I was expecting to have way more productivity, even though I'm so in the productivity and I've gotten so much food out of this garden but already, and we're mid-June, but I have started harvesting since May with like pounds and pounds of green beans, and I was expecting all of that stuff to like happen really in June. And so since they happened for me in May, like June, I'm just like, wow, like I'm already, beside with the exception of peppers, like my peppers are now thriving, but in May it was all of like my squashes and cucumbers and beans, and then now June is like more tomatoes and peppers, and not so much, you know, my cucumbers are on their way out. I already switched over my summer squash and stuff like that, and I'm already thinking about going into a second wave of gardening here. If anything, I hope that this video encouraged you, inspired you, maybe gave you something to think about, and I hope you enjoyed it as I just walked by and seen the stuff that maybe I need to pick, or stuff that could possibly wait until I get my my pictures done in my garden. So I'll see you guys next time. Bye guys.